Wow, thank you so much, Pastor Nico, and a great joy to be here and to be reminded of our journey together, for it has been many, many years on this journey. And may the Lord bless you as you continue to journey and serve here. Thank you, Pastor Brian, also for the invitation and the welcome. You know, I met Pastor Brian when he was a worship pastor at Mavuno Church. You know, and you never think people would grow. You know, you think you vision them somewhere and you think that's where they belong. So it's mind-blowing and an act of God's grace and the blessing of the Lord to see you in this place and the leader of this congregation and the things that you have done. And it's a proper illustration of how men see and how God sees. And we thank God that He is sovereign over men's thoughts, over men's thinking. But for me, a great joy to be here. And, you know, again, our connection is Pastor Nico, and just wonderful to see you in this place where you minister. But thank you. Thank you for this long invitation, and I'm glad that I have finally been able to come. As a person who was once the worship pastor for Nairobi Chapel and sensitive to music, I must commend the band and the worship leaders. You know, absolutely brilliant, and the arrangement of the songs, you know, even right down to when the bass drum, when it goes on and when it's played, you know, I was listening to that and saying, these guys have figured it out. They know what they're doing. They're not just around here, you know, absolutely brilliant. I have been blessed by each and every one of you, and obviously then I hope that the word of the Lord brought through me would be a blessing to you. Again, just to say a little bit more about me, I have been a pastor for, started off in 1997, but prior to that was in evangelism through Campus Crusade for Christ, Life Ministry, straight out of university in 1990, you know, went in. Now some of you are thinking, 1990, and, you know, my parents had not even finished high school for some of you, you know. But yeah, that's where I was, straight into ministry, and that's all I have done most of my life. You know, after that, Nairobi Chapel. When I was done with Nairobi Chapel, they sent me to Life Spring Chapel, where I was a senior pastor and met Pastor Nico. And in 2015, I believe, I, in quotes, retired from pastoral ministry to go into development work with an organization that I began called Edu Kenya, working with underprivileged and setting up schools in the slums. Our schools have done very well. Our first Form 4 class graduated last year, and out of a class of 22, 12 of them have been accepted to university. And, you know, we are talking of kids from Mathare, all of them from Mathare. Each and every one of them has been given university or college posting. And so it's possible, it's really possible to see lives turned around. And that's what I left, what I call full-time pastoral ministry, to be able to do. And then after that, I since joined Christian Aid, where I now serve as their global or the world theology advisor for the entire organization. So still in ministry, not in full-time pastoral work, but always glad to receive an invitation like this. I grab it with both hands. But if you're like me, the year 2020 opened with tremendous promise and enthusiasm. I remember we went to see the fireworks at Carnival. Now, to be a good boy, I made sure I went with my family. But even to be a better boy, I went with my mother-in-law so I wouldn't misbehave. You know, as the fireworks went off, my mother-in-law was there watching us. But it opened with tremendous promise. And, you know, let's just start with the fact that it was 2020. So, you know, I was one of those who are with the double songs. This is the year of double favor. I read prophetically into those things. Everything you double. Oh, I was there. You know, I kicked off the year believing promotion, double. You know, money, double. Everything, I was singing those things, double blessings. Except, you know, I have 3 children and 1 wife. So I didn't want to double those ones. So those ones I left. So on top of that, as a sports enthusiast, 2020 could not be better. There was the continuation of the IRB Rugby Sevens. I played rugby in university, so I was looking forward to the Kenya team doing better. There was footballers like us, Euro 2020, what was it going to look like? And then the big one was the Tokyo Olympics. I mean, I had so much hope and promise for the year. But what happened instead? And it was a rude awakening for me. At the beginning of the year, my mom unfortunately fell sick, and it looked like a small thing. I mean, she just thought she had acid in the stomach, and eventually she went to hospital in February, and I went to see her in Eldoret Hospital, and I was like, it will pass. But that was a Tuesday I went to see her, and within 1 week after that, in February, she had passed away. I was like, what happened? What just happened? My mom was totally unwell. It was just ulcers. We did not know that she had been suffering from pancreatic cancer. We had no idea. And, just like that, gone. March began with COVID hitting our country, and the restriction measures taken, which was a little more difficult for me because now I wanted to be closer to my dad, but I couldn't go to see him and I couldn't go to visit him. So that became a challenge, wrestling with that, and being together with the other members of the family with those restrictions. It became a lot more difficult. In April, my organization, the one that I work for, is a global international development organization. And the funding landscape for international development has just hit a wall because of scandals, and people are beginning to question how much do these organizations earn. And it's true, we earn quite a bit, but how much gets to the ground? And that's a very realistic question, and governments were beginning to push back in international development. And our organization was affected, and they cut down funding. That translated even to my own self. And they said, you know what? The whole organization has to take a hit. For those senior managers, we are cutting down your days of working from 5 days to 3 days. So we'll pay you normal, but we are not paying you for 5 days, we are paying you for 3 days a week, starting, August of this year. I was like, what's going on over here? Life is just coming my way in a big way. But that's what it is. In June, we had hoped that our son would return from Cyprus, where he studies. He's been away, he missed his grandmother's funeral, we've missed him, etc., etc. One of those was waiting for Uhuru to open the country. It was me. But it was because my son was out of the country. He had finished in June. He was supposed to come back early June. June ended. July ended. August came. And, he tried to get flights. One flight canceled. Another flight canceled. People are not flying. It just became challenging. Finally, he came in on the 15th of August. Unfortunately, he has to leave again for his final year in a week's time, next week on Saturday. And we were wrestling with all these things, emotionally churning us in and out, and it was a struggle. All the time, our economy was in free fall. And I could feel the shocks all around me from different people who I was supporting. I can't support you as much because, I've got a reduced income. And, let me just say also, by way of footnote, it was a rude shock to be told we are cutting down your pay, or rather we are cutting down your hours. It really was a rude shock for me. But you know what? It also woke me up. I've been comfortable getting this good pay. I travel around the country, 3 months a year. I'm out in Europe or around Africa, traveling and visiting projects and attending seminars and conducting trainings. And it woke me up and said, you know what? This is a comfort zone, and it will not always be like this. It made me start thinking differently. I began to think about, what can I do? What can I do? I've got 2 children in university outside the country. I have a daughter who's finishing, and she'll soon be going to university. What will I do? And I had to wake up from this comfort of earning a senior job salary. And I went into farming. Right now, let me tell you, I started buying things. I bought cows. So now I'm fattening cows. Not in my own land. My wife was given land by her father. I said, I don't care about traditional culture. I'm going to put my cows in their farm. Waseme nimeolewa. Shauri yao. You know, it was a reality check. And I began to say, okay, I have 2 days. What do I do with these 2 days? I was fortunate to have, a colleague I've been working with and said, what does my future look like if I was to leave this international organization? I have been gifted, I've been skilled in A, B, C, D. I did a test, one of these self-evaluation tests, and I could figure out where I wanted to go. I decided to be bold. I went up to one of my colleagues and said, this is what I sense God is doing in my life. I was very open with him. I said, my hours have been cut down, but I feel this is the place I want to serve. I have these 2 days. Can I work with you? Can I start serving with you? And I laid out my plan, not just my plan for now, but my plan for the future. And they went and they thought about it and they said, yeah, come on, let's be working with you. And I think that organization is closely affiliated to Hope Church. So now I'm going to be coming in a different capacity as a partner of Hope Church. But it made me wake up and start thinking what other possibilities exist. And I'm thankful because I said, this can be a problem, but it can also be an opportunity. And I chose to see it as an opportunity to start tweaking my life and redirecting it in a different way, away from the comfort. But in all these things, I consider myself to have been in the better off category because people are going through stuff. People are going through so much, and so much that one cannot be blamed for asking the question, like I did at a certain point, God, where are you? What's going on? Where are you in the midst of all this? Have you chosen to take a sabbatical? God, you shouldn't take a sabbatical. Come on, hang around because I need you. Where are you? I need you. Have you chosen to stay away from the affairs of the world or my own affairs? The writer of the psalm we have just read this morning may have been in a situation where he experienced numerous problems that the people around him asked him, where is your God? He seemed to have been a person of influence. But also I do take note that he may have been probably in exile, and we'll come down to that a little later on. But probably he too began to wonder, where is God? Not just people asking him, but he himself began to ask, where is God? And he asks that question as well. Here and all around the world today, people are facing the shocks that are making them ask this question. Shocks economically as COVID has affected businesses, travel, and trade. I am in a WhatsApp group with my classmates from high school, and my classmates from high school again are people who have been ministers, cabinet secretaries. I have, senior counsel in the country. So we have a few bigwigs in our class. But even some of them, their lives have fallen apart. They owned big businesses in tourism, but what happened? Gone. Their lives have been brought down to scale zero. So I know that people have been affected significantly. Shocks from adverse climate change effects. As we saw, the year began with the wildest and biggest fires in Australia. Yet at the same time, people were dying from floods in East Africa. Extreme climate shocks. That was January and February of this year. People are facing shocks from societal issues, as race and the unequal treatment of blacks around the world has become a global issue, resulting in the Black Lives Matter campaign. Divisive politics dominate the world leaders of democracy as the UK and the USA deal with Brexit and the upcoming elections. Not talking of our own challenges and divisive politics in the country and corruption and greed, etc., etc. China continues to get a stranglehold over poor and indebted nations, and Russia continues to oppress its people without care for world opinion and tries to continue to influence the rest of the world. Africa, like I said, well, we continue to eat the future of our youth and our children as presidents and governors and other leaders stuck away billions in corruption money. And who would have thought that they would also eat COVID-19 money? Add to that now the global pandemic, COVID-19. These issues can raise a question, where is your God? And one can be filled with despair. And like the psalmist over here, you can ask yourself, why are you downcast, O my soul? Why so depressed within me? For many of the faithful in biblical times, an encounter with God was mostly when a person went to the temple. And like I said, it seems to be hinted that the writer of the Psalm 42 was in exile and therefore unable to worship God or appear before God in the manner in which his or her faith would dictate. The writer remembers those good old days when, together with a multitude, a throng of people, a crowd of people, just like I saw us this morning, they went to the temple to meet their God, to the sanctuary with songs of singing and dancing and celebration. The good old days when everything was normal. And it may feel the same for us today. The days when we could all freely head to church are for some only a memory and a longing. Some are afraid of coming to church. Some have been told not to come to church. I don't know if the rules apply under 13, over 58. Does that still apply? Ish. But there are restrictions about free worship because of the COVID-19 measures. Or I'm not sure the restrictions on numbers, if they are still there, I don't know. But people are afraid. It's not the same. Restaurants are different. Sports is different. No fans in the stadium. No school now, but when we return, things will be different. When our children go back to school, things will be very, very different. And you know, even I long for those good old days. I'm not a person who likes to be squeezed, whether in a matatu or in something. I just don't like to be squeezed. But now I'm longing for the days when I could be squeezed. Working from home. You know, it was a beginning, very exciting. We work from home, no traffic, things like that. Now I'm longing for my colleagues and my workmates, people we used to heckle with. Now I have to negotiate space at home, Wi-Fi with my son, with my daughter, with my wife. Hey, can you switch off your Wi-Fi? That's how it is now. I'm having a meeting. Are you watching a movie? Or what are you doing? Switch off that Wi-Fi. That's how it is at home. We long with the writer of this psalm for those days. The longing for the life before Corona, coupled with the strict COVID-19 mitigation measures, can surely leave one's heart downcast, as the writer expresses. But God says in Isaiah 57 verse 15, "For this is what the high and exalted one says, he who lives forever, whose name is holy. I live in a high and holy place, but also with the one whose heart is humble and contrite, to revive the spirit of the lowly and to revive the heart of the contrite." God has demonstrated his desire to be where people are hurting and to make his presence known there. I have asked people who are desperate and still don't know what will happen tomorrow the question, when I look at their lives, especially when I go back to where my place of work is, because I started the project and I still, have my hands on the project in Mathare with Edukenya. I ask them, how do you survive? And more often than not, the answer that I get is this: it is only God. It is only God. And it is easy for us to take for granted that answer that people say it is only God and think it's just a spiritual, answer like I'm fine. But it's the truth for some of these people. You have called everybody you could call. You have gone to every place you could go. And at the end of the day, you have no solution for that day. Yet you find you slept that day. You've woken up another day. The children somehow have eaten. And you wonder, how could I still be standing? How could I still be facing another day? Yet we would have been utterly broken were it not for God. It is only God. I have been in those situations, so I know it. I know what it means to be standing today looking at a bleak tomorrow, but also encouraged by the fact that I am still standing. And I do not know how I am still standing. And my answer then, as it is for some of you today, it is only God. If it is only God, then we can look back on his mercies, how he has led us yesterday, and we can look forward to his promises, even when we cannot see a way out. God will make a way. But let me just say that when you are young, you can take some silly risks. And so I'm not there anymore. One such risk was immediately after my wife and I had just gotten married and, planned everything, planned our honeymoon. With the romantic notion of a wedding, there must have been a good honeymoon, we thought. So we worked hard to organize everything. We were flat broke by the end of it all. Flat broke by the time we were done with the wedding day. We paid off everything as much as we could. And we said, whatever will happen as we go ahead. So we worked hard, organized our honeymoon. We got our finances just right. But for those of you who have been to honeymoons, you can never get your finances just right. Somewhere along the way, budget inaharibika. You're caught up in this endocrine state of romantic imbalance and, you see something, you want to buy it for her. You think you're on your honeymoon, so you have to eat the extra cake. By the time we were finishing our honeymoon, let me tell you, we had only fare. Okay? To get us from where we had gone to Nairobi, and then from Nairobi to the house. We ate everything else and left it just that. Believe it or not, kufa dereva kufa makanga, that's how it was at that time. Then guess what? On our way back to Nairobi, it was on Thika Road now. Our transport broke down. We were in one of the shuttles. And it broke down in a place in Oshago, we did not know where, and it broke down. And the guys didn't care. People began taking other means of transport. My wife looked at me, okay. And me, I was like, what do we do? We paid for this. These guys are not refunding us. And yet we have to make it to Nairobi. And we have just after this fare from Nairobi to Ayani Estate, where we used to live. I sat down on the stone, those on the sides of the road, and I wondered, what do we do? This is fantastic. But you know what? Out of nowhere came this lady, and this lady used to go with us she used to attend Parklands Baptist Church, where I was, we used to go, my wife and I at that time. And she's not a person you would notice because she was from Oshago, let's put it that way. And guess what? God placed her in Oshago for us at that particular time because the matatu got broke right there in her Oshago. So she just comes walking by and says, what are you doing here? And he said, well, we were in this matatu and it broke down. What are you doing here? She said, this is where I live. Okay, I see. And with all humility, I said, it's good to know where you live. But this is what has happened. And we explained to her and said, we don't have anything to take us from point A to point B, which is home. And she graciously somehow had money and she gave it to us, Pastor Brian. That's how we got home from our honeymoon. When we ask where God is, He is always around. And God has people stationed in every stage of our lives, literally every stage of our lives, where we stop or where we are stuck. This was a girl of Oshago. And he knew if we get stuck in Oshago, he will be in Oshago through this person to provide for you. God has a person at every stage. God works in and through people. He places people along our life journey, those people who become his hands and his feet. And it may be that when we are stuck, it is because a person who is in the area of your operation and should have been God's instrument has not turned up or is being disobedient. And hopefully then God sends another. We have seen how God has used people during this time of COVID to show himself. He has used health workers to minister to people. He has used churches like yours. I'm aware that you have significantly played a part in helping people during this time. He has used individuals who have used their own initiative to help others. And sometimes we are fixed on the scripture. Inasmuch as you've done it to the least of my brethren, you have done it unto me. Yet we could also look at it the other way. Inasmuch as you've done it to the least of my brethren, you have done it for me as God's instrument. People are God's hands and people are God's feet. And he sends somebody who is in the area who is willing and obedient. And for those of you who have been God's hands and feet, do not underestimate even the little that you do, the little that you can give. And I encourage you, do the little. Because to the world, you may be one person. But to one person, you may be the world. Where is our God? God is with us. God is near to us through his Spirit. And all around the world, God is near through the hearts and the hands of those who are reaching out to touch their neighbors. And in all these ways, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. As the song says, his mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. And today and every day morning, you will experience that steadfast love. Only God. And because of this, we can take hope that God will see us through. Why are you downcast, O my soul? Why is so depressed within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my Savior and my God. Amen.
Hello, thank you so much for interacting with our social media content. Maybe you're there looking for a church or you gained interest about our church and you'd like to join and become a member of the church. We want you to send your phone number and your name to our WhatsApp line. We'll get in touch with you and show you how you can be a member of this amazing church. Let's change the world together.